FM NewsTalk 97.1. On-demand audio.
What words does the president have to use to say we're not going back to Mubarak?
He has to express those concerns and say, obviously, we want this change to be not just democratic, but to also be supportive of stability and also to be protecting of minorities and human rights in Egypt.
Yeah, this temporary, Mohamed Morsi temporary power grab. And many newsmakers are calling him Egypt's new pharaoh. To discuss this latest development, as others, we go to our foreign policy expert. Stephen Yates is with the D.C. International Advisory, dciadvisory.org. Also, former advisor to former VP Dick Cheney. Stephen, happy post-Thanksgiving.
Hi, Dana. Great to be back with you.
Good to speak with you. Did this power grab from Mohamed Morsi, did this surprise you? This is supposed to be a temporary power grab. Give us a little, how temporary? Like when, do you honestly expect him to, I know there's a lot of questions here, but this is such a, do you honestly expect him to return powers, to release himself from being exempt from any sort of judicial oversight?
Well, aside from the particular factors driving Egypt, it's just unnatural and unusual for leaders who have taken power into their own hands to just voluntarily give it back to other independent institutions down the road. Usually that's only done by compellence. And in really this transition in Egypt from Mubarak into this unknown, uncharted territory has really been marked by surprises and power grabs. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood wasn't supposed to run for the presidency, and it did. It wasn't supposed to win, and it did. It wasn't supposed to do a number of different things, but it continues to move in a very unusual and unsettling direction.
Yes, and this, especially when you consider this administration, when Hillary Clinton was traveling over there, had really endorsed Mohamed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood into coming into power. So this is, all of this, you can't, I can't believe that they would have done so without thinking that this could have been a risk of him ascending to power and winning the presidency.
Well, it certainly is an affront to Secretary Clinton, who was just there meeting with him on what was supposed to be a diplomatic breakthrough on the Gaza situation. But to have her just leave and a few days later drop out there in the open that I'm going to try to rule by diktat and shall not be subject to judicial review, it does harken back to Pharaoh, as you said in the lead, but it also puts Egypt further down the road towards ruling like Pakistan and becoming that kind of a state right at the heart of the Middle East.
How is this going to affect the very, very fragile ceasefire between Hamas and Israel? Because Egypt, we talked about this last week with the president and the secretary of state when they were traveling over in Southeast Asia. The president was essentially MIA in this conflict, and then finally Hillary Clinton goes in the 11th hour after Egypt had kind of taken advantage of that power vacuum. How is it going to affect that very fragile truce? Because I think Hamas it seemed to me that they felt a little bit empowered because of Egypt's leadership. And now it seems as though Mohamed Morsi may have targeted or may have triggered more protests, but this time against him as opposed to for him. Is that going to affect it? And how much do you think?
Well, I think that when you look at the dynamics there, the Hamas activists in the Gaza area are basically the junior varsity team of the Muslim Brotherhood that's been around for decades and decades and actually is the origin of the broader Islamist movement that now is really catching everyone's attention. I think that they staged this ceasefire. I'm not a believer in ceasefires being enduring. They're at best tactical. When people have deep-rooted divisions that are hostile, those are going to come back. I don't expect the ceasefire to hold. I think Hamas did feel emboldened. And I think, frankly, the Muslim Brotherhood and Morsi felt emboldened. Otherwise, why stake out on this now? There wasn't anything that made him have to take this grab now. He's playing a game of trying to allow the military and intelligence services to run sort of an independent operation and let the West think they can deal with them, while he essentially sets up an Islamist state taking control of the rest of the country.
Yeah, and that's the question. He didn't need to do this now. Like, how on earth? It seems as almost that they overplayed their hand. They had been doing fairly well for the most part. And now the Muslim Brotherhood is having to get out there to try to quell what appears to be the start of a counter-revolution against them. They were really behind and involved with the Arab Spring that we saw. Now you have people in the streets protesting against them. I'm trying to figure out what on earth they were thinking with their strategy here.
Well, we'll try to climb into their heads, although that will be
kind of scary.
A difficult operation, maybe unpleasant too. But I think that they may have calculated that in the wake of having brokered this ceasefire, that the United States would perhaps be less likely to condition or withhold the aid that the United States generously gives to its security services. And if it leaves the security services sort of running its own thing, the United States, like Pakistan, might be tempted to go ahead and continue that aid while there's this other activity going on in another area. They also may have felt as though the international community may be less likely to get involved and hold them back, and so they could have a freer hand at going after these protesters. So we have to see how this plays out, whether Morsi really pays a price politically inside Egypt for what I think is overreach. But it's going to really rely on forces in Egypt that we have not done our homework to cultivate.
Right. Well, exactly. And we will definitely keep our eyes on this because it just seemed that they were so careful going up to this point, and then they kind of just blown it. By the way, do you expect any more? Do you think that these sort of counter-revolution protests may spread, like we saw the Arab Spring spread? And in Egypt, we know that so much of that was fueled by the Muslim Brotherhood. Do you think that's gonna spread, and that could be a threat to them overall?
I think people are going to be a bit more cautious because they now know that it's more likely that the United States and the West will not intervene and will not do anything decisive. I mean, they've seen Syria burn for nearly 2 years. They've seen a lot of really negative reaction to the way things have played out in Libya. It may be the case that those who would seek freedom and be willing to risk their lives just don't want to sort of do it for nothing, standing alone against the world at the moment.
Right. Switching gears just briefly with Benghazi, Susan Rice had said over the Thanksgiving break, according to Reuters, that she's trying to defend herself and saying that she relied solely and squarely on the information provided to her by the intel community, and that she just doesn't, all of this Benghazi criticism seems unfounded. I don't think that the administration can kind of saddle her with the blame while at the same time expecting her to remain blameless so that they can nominate her if she needs to replace Hillary Clinton. What's their game here?
Well, I think that their game is essentially to rely on the American public being stupid. I think that's their assumption. They think we don't have brains and we can't figure out. Of course, she didn't act alone. The president himself said that he had an errand for her to do for which she had no qualification, but she was willing to do it. It was a very odd defense of her by the president of the United States. But I think that she is responsible for taking what she knew to be incorrect. This reliance on the intelligence community alone also puts her on the hook, I guess, for apologizing for 6 years of Bush bashing over bad intelligence on Iraq. I assume that she would have deep sympathy for people who have been misled by intelligence.
Right.
But of course, they are not honest in these arguments. What they're really trying to do is to muddy the waters enough so the president can appoint whomever he wants and just basically move forward into a second-term agenda as if this controversy never happened. And so most Americans aren't going to know what the intelligence community did or didn't do. The internal talking points process and all of that is so convoluted and non-transparent. It's very hard for people to seize on to what did someone do. There wasn't a break into some weird office. So I think the game is to just buy time, obfuscate, confuse, play the race card a few times, try to play the feminist card a few times, and just make people pull back from focusing on what she did. What she knew, what she said wasn't true. She never apologized. She never corrected the record. And now she just doesn't want to take any responsibility.
Well, this, I'm sure, is going to continue to play out. I don't see any sort of solution or resolution to this in the coming months. I think this is just going to stretch out all the way, possibly even till spring. I agree. Which is unfortunate because we have families that need justice. But there you go. Stephen
Absolutely.
Yates, always appreciate your expertise, sir. And I'm so glad you had a nice Thanksgiving, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
We did. Thanks very much, Dana.
Okay, take care. Thanks again.